Okay, this class we will be divided again in three main sections. Again, we're going to have to take three quizzes online. This time we're only going to have one attempt. Then we will move to the next section of the class that I will explain those online quizzes that we just took. And finally, at the end, we will break into groups. And in this time in the class discussion, we will talk about selective breeding. So in this section of the class, you're supposed to take your quiz. So if you are already in class, the time of class, please go and take your quiz. And remember, there are three main sections that you're supposed to read. So you're supposed to take this quiz that say Greek philosophers, this one say selective breeding, and this one that is the section of Aristotle. So Greek philosophers and selective breeding. Okay, now that we're done with this one, now I'm going to explain the answer of those quizzes. Okay, so question for today, we're going to talk about what is selective breeding, and we're going to talk about the past, the present, and the future of selective breeding. And I'm going to we use some video lectures that talk about that, and I'm going to give you a few examples that we'll have in the in-class discussion, so you understand that the selective breeding actually is still taking place and how it's affecting your life. So I'm sure that you know that the first quiz that you have to answer was this one from this video that talk about the history through the eyes of a chicken, how selective breeding has affected the anatomy of the chickens. Okay, and to start that, maybe you remember this, in the video they show that there is a huge diversity of shapes, of color of the feathers, of diversity in general of different chickens. And this is fantastic, although we only know very characteristic type of a chicken. There is actually a huge diversity, and that was a very important idea that it will be fundamental for Darwin. So let's start the quiz. So the first question that they talk in that video is, you know, what is the part of the word that that is the naming range of the first group of chickens that they were artificially selected, and they give you these options: Southeast Asia, Egypt, Europe, or China. So the answer will be this one, as you watch in the video. This will be the answer. And maybe you remember that because of the process of colonization, so these breeds that they were in the southeast of Asia, in this section, they were brought to England, and so they show here with these lines, and they call this the hen fever because they were able to mix and to breed so many traits and so many different species, and in that way they were able to get the traits that they were looking to. If they were looking for species that they look different with a specific feathers, so they were able to get it. If they were species they were looking for more meat, so they were able to get the species with more meat. So that was something that it was very interesting, and they discussed in the video. Second question: why do smaller chickens uh, make more meat and eggs than earlier chickens? And here you have all the options, and the answer is D. As we discussed in the video, selective breeding, artificial selection has played a key role, although it's possible to add genes from any species, even for example from frogs, into the DNA of the chicken. Right now we have the techniques. This is not the main reason why they produce more meat and more eggs. The main reason right now is this one. And why, and also, although we can add hormones, and also they play a key role. Right now, actually, the main reason still is this. So the main reason of all this, it will be selective breeding right now. Okay, now this question: which of the following reasons explain why scientists believe that chickens were domesticated? So they give you all these options, and they talk they talk in the video that they were used for fighting. And you can see the video. In the video, this picture that they talk that they were used for fighting. So it's fascinating. In the beginning, they were not used for to collect the eggs or for meat or for any type of for eat for the leather for the feathers. It's just fascinating how this was not the main reason. It was just mainly for entertainment, for fighting. And now let's try to answer this question. Why are chickens a good species to help us to study genetics? And if you remember, we studied last time what it was a model organism. So in this case, the answer will be all these options. So if you remember, chickens take only 7 months between generations. And on the other hand, for example, humans will take years. So these 7 months is a short, is a more or less rapid generation. It's not as small like fruit flies that they will take. It will be like 2 weeks for a new generation. And yeast, if you remember that we talked last time of yeast, that it will be every 8 hours. So these ones are even breed faster. But for example, yeast is not as close to humans as chicken, and so chicken have some advantage. Also, chicken has a wide variety of traits. So this is a reason why it's a good system to study genetics, because you can study, for example, the coloration, the feathers. So there are many ways to study that, and they have a high genetic diversity. As we studied, this is why it was so interesting for Darwin to study all those. So the answer here, it will be all these options, D. And uh, later we will study that in fruit flies we also have a variety of traits. So here, for example, you can see that while the normal flies have these flat wings, we can have mutants that can have curly wings. If you see, we will study how it was very important to study coloration of the eye. This is why we know that the genes are on the chromosomes. And we can have also other colorations in the wings, in the body. Again, here you can produce orange eyes, and there is a huge amount of variations and mutations that they are very important to study genetics. So this is why both fruit flies and also in this case chickens, both are good systems to study genetics. And there are many other organisms that are good to study biology, and they are called model organisms. And here, as we talked last time, we have, for example, yeast, worm, fruit fly, fish, mouse, and all of them are good. Here you can see some examples, and as we saw in the last class, you have an example of they have a normal name, and this is the scientific name underneath. So here is the scientific yeast, and the scientific name is Saccharomyces cerevisiae. As we studied last time, here is the normal name, and here, as we studied last time, the scientific name, that is Drosophila melanogaster. And they are good to study because they provide experimental systems that yield insight into human biology and health, because as we say, they can breed fast, they are small, so you can have them in the lab. And they have been studied in a lot of detail. So for example, we have the genome, all the genes of the fruit flies. We have all the genes, they have been sequenced of all these organisms. We can also sequence all the protein, we know all the proteins that they have. And now they are starting to study how they interact, for example, in fruit flies, and also in these worms that are called C. elegans. So why they are model organisms? Because they are easy to breed, because they are easy to manipulate in the lab, as we said last time, and because we have studied them in a lot of detail, so we can use them and have answer questions very fast. Okay, now let's go for this question. Why were chickens influencing for this very important person, Charles Darwin's development of the theory of evolution. Here you have four potential answers, and the answer will be D. And why? Because Darwin thought if human can breed so many type of chicken and have so many different traits, then nature can do something similar. So this is why. C is not correct because Chinese chicken adapt to their new environment, European environment. Actually, Darwin wasn't talking exactly about that. Darwin was talking about that there is variation and they can adapt to new environments and the ones that are better adapted are the ones that survive. So this is not exactly the best answer. Chickens are one of the oldest species, thus is not the there is no relationship, and chickens make rapid changes between generations. This is not exactly what Darwin said. So the best answer is this one, because as he saw that there were so many different type of chicken, there was so much variation. If you breed them, they will be a chicken that can have the best traits to survive in a specific environment. And if you have any doubt, you can go and see the video, and they have this crazy picture of Darwin that he saw that, for example, chickens have so many different traits. So one of them, for example, it could produce beneficial phenotypic changes that could allow him to adapt to an environment. So imagine that there is a Canadian chicken that needs to be white, so because it can hide in the snow. So he was able to see, okay, if they can produce all these colors, and then he saw finally one that it was a white chicken. So like maybe that will be beneficial, and he can live and hide in Canada in the snow. So it would be very easy. So this was just an example, and he found many. You can think about many different hypotheses.